Oh, as tradition would allow, the reason why this one's later, I had a baby,
Yeah.
and
We have lots of babies all the time. That's why we
yeah,
never make podcasts.
yeah, no. Have to start
Just
off
kidding.
with the excuse of why this one's
That's a
later.
good excuse, though.
Yeah,
Having a baby.
had a baby.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, but anyway,
How was having a baby?
really good. The whole process was a little like wild because it was going in for a different appointment that had to do with the baby, but then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, let's do a C-section," and it was like, "Oh, okay," because the baby was breech and all this stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, let's just take the baby now," and it was just kind of like, all right then,
Yeah.
you know, okay.
It was funny because you were texting me that day and you're like, hey, I'm going to open gym tonight. I don't know if you want to come. And then, like, 2 minutes after that or something, you're like, oh, baby's coming. And I was like, all right, I'm guessing they weren't planning to have the baby today.
No, not at
Otherwise,
all.
you wouldn't have planned to go
We were
to
literally
the gym.
talking about getting KFC on the way home, and then the doc comes in and was like, "Yeah, we just think we should take the baby today." It wasn't emergent. There was nothing like severely wrong. It was just kind of like, better option. So that whole process was kind of wild, and then a C-section is wild, and then
Yeah, that's weird.
after that though, everything is really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because there's this stigma, I feel like, in life. Whether I was just talking to my cousin about this the other day, because he's expecting a baby now too. We got married, yeah, and he's expecting a baby due in March, and so we were talking about it, and he's like, "How is having a kid at home? Like being at home now because we've been at home for a week and a half."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "It's great, dude." I was like, "It's not bad. It's not near as terrifying as I thought it'd be. There's still moments where you're a little bit like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?" But overall, it's not that bad, and especially because my wife is really good with babies and stuff. But
That does help.
it was like everybody kind of tells you, and even now people come up to me like, "Oh, getting sleep," and
Yeah.
like they act like how miserable. Like how great but miserable it is.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the same stigma like getting married.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's like kind of the same thing with marriage.
And it's like, shoot, it's nice to talk to somebody when they like say something positive about one of those life-altering events. Yeah. But overall, it's like, no, it's been amazing. And we did definitely get a sleeper. Our baby's a really good sleeper.
Nice.
So, everything's great.
Forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Sleeping Beauty.
What's the biggest, like, change for you personally? Like, having a kid, like, how did that change, like, your view on life? Or I don't know. Or even just, like, you personally, did that, like, change anything in you feel like?
I feel like it's made me, in a lot of ways, like wanting to build myself more. Like before, I always had the idea of like, oh, it'd be cool to do this and like grow or learn or, do this, that, and the other. And now it's like, wow, I really need to do this, and like started doing stuff and working towards things and actually having like the work ethic, time management. For sure, because when I go home, it's not as easy to like work from home.
Right.
Because it's like if I'm at the office for a majority of the day, I don't want to go home and Naomi's been with the baby all day, and I don't want to just like leave her with the baby still. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's changed that side of me where it's like I need to be better, and grow and like grow up a little bit. So it's definitely made me a little more picky. About what I do with my time, for sure. But yeah, overall, I think that's kind of it. I'm still waiting for. I've been getting some like deeper like spiritual revelation from it, like the same way when I got married, and it's like the correlation between Jesus and the church, and then you and your wife, kind of a thing. I'm getting that correlation now a little bit as a dad, and like babies and things, and it's like. Revelation I had the other day was like, man, we need to treat more people like babies. Yeah, deep, profound thought. But like in the aspect of like, we have this thought that when people are older, wow, you should know better.
Yeah.
When it's like, you know what? We're kind of, not as an excuse, but we're all sinners. and we all kind of mess up. So maybe it's good if because when my wife takes my baby and she's crying when she's not supposed to be, like, not sleeping, it's like, oh, what's wrong, kind of a thing, and like, I love you, and like, okay, let's fix this. Let's diagnose the problem. Are you hungry? Poopy diaper. Like, you go through the list of things of what's wrong, and I feel like as adults, it's like, what's wrong with you? And we don't diagnose where they could have gone wrong. We don't help. We just yell and write off or see you later. Yeah. And I was like, man.
That's very true, actually.
I don't know. And God treats us like his children. So, like, I don't know. Yes, at some point we do know better and we need to be held to a standard, absolutely. But how we handle that, I feel like, I don't know. It was just kind of this thing that I was working on.
It's like, even when your kid doesn't meet the standard, you still, as a loving parent, there's like a gracious way that you go about, like, well, okay, let's see like what the problem is here. How can we help correct this?
Yep.
Whereas you're right. Like, a lot of times we have this like certain expectation for adults, like, you should know better, you should do better, and then when the expectation isn't met with adults, it's just like, you're stupid, or like, what's wrong with you? There's like, we totally respond differently.
Yeah. So anyway, some like deeper spiritual revelations I feel like will come in time, but because it still hasn't even
I'm sure it'll change so much, as she like grows up and stuff. It'll
it's wild,
change a lot. That's interesting. I just always wonder how much I'll change once I have a kid, or like what kind of dad I'll be, or I don't know. You always like look at parents and like be like, or like I even think of my dad who's like super like safety oriented and stuff, and I was always like, I'm never gonna be like that, like safety Steve. Like I'm gonna let my kid go run around and do whatever he wants.
Right.
But then the more and more I think about it, I'm like, once I actually have a kid, I feel like I'm not gonna be like, I'm gonna want to like protect my kid with my whole life. You know, like I just wonder like what little things will shift, just in my own head or whatever, just from what's happening.
I know what you're talking about.
But
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, big life change. Yeah, it's crazy. It's exciting.
Yeah. But then the topic of today's podcast is not babies.
No, not babies.
Not the babies.
That'd be interesting. I don't know anything about babies. That's another thing too.
Yet.
More and more. There's even the past couple weeks, I've like learned so many things about babies. I was like, what in the world? Like, I didn't know anything about it. But anyways. Today we're gonna just talk about the church. But I was thinking just kind of dig in a little bit to like what is like a successful like church model, or like how do we handle church growth kind of in light of like the mega church movement and like all these pastors or leaders that you like come out and you see they had like these moral failures, or like I've been listening to like the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast, and it's like this church. I'm on the second to last episode.
Oh wow, you're past me. I stopped listening at a certain point.
It's like kind of like just interesting to listen to though, and think about like this church like blows up and becomes huge, and like from a outside perspective, or even people in the church, it's like successful and being fruitful, but behind closed doors, like within the leadership, it's like super unhealthy and people are getting hurt, and like eventually the whole church just falls apart, you know. Right. And so it's like, and I feel like we keep seeing this time and time again, like these churches like blow up and then something like falls apart, or like a leader fails, or like I don't know, like the church fails, something like that. And so I've just been like thinking a lot recently, even just as someone who's like in leadership in the church, like how do we handle the growth of our church or our ministry in a way that's healthy, like, or what should even like the biblical model for that be? And wrestling with like, it's like we want our church to grow, we want our ministry to grow, right? Like we want to see more people be a part of our church, because that, I mean, hopefully that means people are being reached with the gospel and coming to know Christ. But also, I don't think that it automatically means that that's happening if we're growing, you know, like,
right.
because if we're not, I mean, some of these churches, maybe people are just showing up because they have like really great music and lights and their speakers, like people like to follow like a really charismatic leader, you know.
Right.
So are churches even being built on the right things? Are people even being drawn to the right things? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think of like mega churches? Like, do you think it's inherently wrong to be a mega church? Like, is there a certain like point where it's like counterproductive, or you're like, your church should just not, one church building should never exceed this many people? Or do you think there's a healthy way to be like a mega church, or there's like a space for that kind of?
I think man. It's a really good question and good topic, because I don't have like a final thought on it yet. Maybe as we talk, I'll kind of work my way there. So anybody listening, don't judge me as I kind of talk through this. But like, I was just having this conversation with somebody else, but in a little different dynamic, is that instead of mega church, think that there's mega people. Because so many people refuse to do what God has called them to do. So many people kind of don't actively love, reach, encourage, do that sort of thing. So then it's left up to the people that are willing to do even more, kind of a thing. And so like when I look at a big city where a church starts to become a mega church, it's like, is that because there's not enough churches doing what's right? Not that a mega church means you're doing what's right. I'm just going off for right now, assuming that this church is doing what is right.
There's obviously something about that church that is drawing people in more than what any other church in the area. Right.
And so that's what I'm just going to assume, that they're theologically sound for a minute. I know that's not always the case, but let's just assume. Then other churches maybe aren't doing what can reach certain people, but also don't gauge a church success based on size too, because, you know, churches, you go into a church service and there could be 10 people, but the Holy Spirit's moving. You know what I mean? That's what the gauge of success is. And so like, but at the same token, it's like the church that is trying to reach as many people as possible, and we look at them with success, it's like, because of what they're doing, or is it because there's a lack of options? There's a lack of multitude. There's a lack of people doing what they're called to do. So there's part of me that looks at it from that standpoint, where I'm like, mega churches maybe aren't wrong, though I don't think they're the best option, but they're the only option right now because those churches are so actively moving. But then also, I mean, something that is free essentially to go to church, other than tithing, mega churches can afford more.
Right.
And if you told me that I could use a car for free, and you put two cars side by side and you said one's a Tesla and then one's a Honda Civic from 2001,
it's like, which one are you going to choose?
Yeah. And so I understand where people come from to pick that, but I think there is a way for mega churches to perform healthily, where the biggest problem, and I don't care what church size it is, and I think it boils down to, is discipleship. Because yes, mega church, have as many services as you want, have a person preaching, but a person preaching is not discipleship. Discipleship is the people in the pews reaching one another, and leaders and so on, and what ministries you're doing, this and that matter. And for example, though I am not a Joel Osteen fan per se, but I remember some famous, it might have been the Christian comedian that had a moral failure, but whatever, I forget his name, Chris, maybe. Anyway, it might have been him, or maybe it was somebody else. But he like had a video once where he's talking about Joel Osteen, and he attended his church once just to see, and he's like, yeah, we crack jokes about this guy, but like, how many churches do you walk into their foyer and there's a card for marriage counseling, abuse counseling, this, and like, we make fun of this guy or this or that, but like the stuff that they do, that can be good, and that draws people in. And so, you know, looking at our church, one of the biggest things that people draw in for was the kids ministry. You know, it's like, that's why young families, young couples come here, is because the kids ministry is so good. You know, the atmosphere of love, and you're welcomed, and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know if the size of the church is good to gauge it, but I think that you do open the door way more to, as a leader, moral failure.
Right.
Because you start to be put more on a pedestal, and especially with social media and all these different things. And that's what happens when you don't have accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm generally pretty against the idea of a mega church because of the fact that I really do just think the bigger you get as the church, the harder it is for you to be what the church is really supposed to be.
Right.
Which is, like you said, discipleship is kind of like the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And in order for like real discipleship to happen, I think it needs to happen on small scale, like life on life, like people living life together, right? Yep. But it's like when I'm just like one person in a crowd of 5,000 people, it's like how hard it's that much harder for me to get connected. Like, I mean, even if the church has some like small groups in place, it's like how many small groups do you have to get 5,000 people connected in a small group, you know? Like eventually it comes, I feel like it just gets to a point where it's like we need to like break out and kind of like, I don't know. I feel like to me, it makes more sense to keep our churches smaller for the sake of keeping people better connected and better discipled. And even from the like volunteer standpoint, like I feel like maybe we've talked about this before, but it's like even like in a mega church, somebody wants to like volunteer, or like let's say someone wants to like get involved in the worship team. They're like, if they're not like rock star like professional musician,
you're not
they're not even like, there's no point in even thinking about it, right? And like there's basically a staff member for every single possible position, which is awesome. They have the resources for that, but what space is there for any person to serve? All they're left to do is be a consumer now, or to just be a bystander, right? And like that to me is a problem as well, because people need to be, the church is meant to be more than just a place where you come and you just observe. Like people need to have opportunity to get plugged in. And again, it's not that that's not possible in the megachurch, but I think it's incredibly hard to give that opportunity for every person who would want to in your church if you're a megachurch. But then, I mean, like you said, it also is much more likely, I think, that leaders have moral failures. But I feel like what I've observed a lot too is one of the reasons a megachurch starts is it's like one charismatic leader that everybody's following. And so, and a lot of times it's like that person wasn't even setting out to make a megachurch. It just happened. But what it turns out being is thousands of people following one person. The leadership for thousands of people is falling on one person's shoulders. And even if they have like some support or accountability around them, it's like they are the man, you know, and they're on such a high pedestal. And like I feel like Americans are, even maybe subconsciously, they're kind of drawn to that. Like, of course, we love to like elevate people. We love like the celebrity, like we love to make people celebrities, and for some reason, like associating with the celebrity like makes us feel like we're a part of something significant. Like yeah, it's almost like people are more drawn to that church out of any other church in the area because it's like somehow they're a part of this like movement that's better than any other church around them, or like we're like associated with this leader, he's way better than any other pastor in the area, you know. And it's like almost becomes more about the pastor than anything else, like this one charismatic leader we're following, than anything else, you know. And like that's a problem to me, because no person should ever have that kind of weight on them. Like no pastor should ever be expected to lead that many people, I don't think. Or I don't think they should ever be elevated to that status. So I just think like just celebrity pastors in general, it's like, not that all of them are, even if they do a great job, it's still, I feel like it would just be better if we didn't put them on these pedestals like this, you know?
Oh yeah,
because
100%. It
even bothers me when it's like people are like fans of certain preachers and that's all they talk about is this one preacher that they listen to all the time, and it's, I'm just like, do I really have to listen to this guy? Like, why can't I just like be involved in my church, listen to my pastor, and sometimes I'm like, do you follow this guy or Jesus?
Yeah.
Like, who's influencing you more, this person or like the Bible, like Jesus, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I've been just kind of, I guess because also recently I've been listening to that podcast, which is about a mega church, which started from basically everyone following this one like charismatic leader pretty much, and he just was not prepared for leadership at all, and stuff just blew up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, because I was listening to that too, and then I stopped listening to it. Okay, so it starts off phenomenal for me, and this isn't like some podcast review, but like, it started off phenomenal for me because it was convicting, and it was like convicting in the sense like, not that I felt like I was doing these things, but like that moment where you're like, am I doing any of these things? Mm-hmm. Am I heading down that route? Because now I'm wearing fancy sneakers, and they talk about like that pastors that wear sneakers, Instagram or whatever, and I'm like, wait a second, is that me? Like, and I started to and then I started thinking like, well, from the pulpit, I've said things that, you know, could come across as harsh. So wait, is that me? And then I just started going down this route of like, oh, snap. Like, bring me back to the middle if I'm too far, and just praying about stuff. Then I got to the episode where there was like, they started talking about the masculinity stuff and just kind of almost like a little feminism undertones, where I was just kind of like, and no offense to that or anything, it just kind of made me like, okay, I'm going to take a break. Just because that's the thing about that specific situation, is that some of the things where they played clips of what he said, and I'm like, man, there's so much truth. Yeah. But my goodness, bro, you need a filter. Right. And then once again, it was like, Brock. Yeah. Let's think about this for a minute, you know. But I think one of the reasons, so there's an equation here that I think something that happens, putting people on a pedestal, equates to the moral failure, which leads to a lack of grace when they fail. Because of the pedestal we put them on, we see them as beyond human, when in reality they are human, and if we kept that in mind, they wouldn't be on a pedestal in our mind. Just because somebody's a leader, or we seek them for counsel, or they preach, does not mean they are the answer. It means they're held to a higher standard. Yeah. It means that they do this as a job and spend more time doing it. Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that they're superhuman. And which then leads to, if we have that perspective, then we stop putting them on a pedestal, and the church can still grow. That's like First Free. Right? That's that big church over in La Crosse, Holman area. From what I've heard, I like the way that Shane does things. He does not own his pulpit. He gives it up a lot. Yeah, that's good. Which I think is one of the things you have to do when your church gets to be mega. You have to open your pulpit up. You cannot be the only one. Which is one of the things that I look at people like Stephen Furtick, and I'm like, I wonder, you know what I mean? And especially because of how open Stephen Furtick has been in his messages and so on, is that he's, you know, scared of people's approval and disapproval and things like that. That's which I completely understand. I think all of us have a sense of that, but he talks about it pretty openly. And so it's just one of those things that I think, do I like mega churches? No. Have I had good experiences with them? No. I haven't. Yeah. But that's just me. There's lots of people that, even in the Mars Hill thing, you hear people that are like, I had great experience. Yeah. Because you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right. Like I said, there was some truth in what he's saying, even if he's not delivering it well. But I agree with you. I think the best formula, because it's the most realistic, is the smaller churches. Keeping and how do you do that if all of a sudden next Sunday morning 1,000 people show up to our church? Like, what are we gonna do? Say sorry? No. It's one of those things where you're like, crap. How do you stop it? So I don't know. But realistically, smaller churches for the best ministry, I think, are the best. In a perfect world, do mega churches work? Absolutely. But we're not in a perfect world, and I don't think it's the most effective way of ministry. And I think they're very small in the sense of like magnifying glass from the world on them. And so when there is a failure, which there's bound to be, because guess what? They're people.
Right.
Not because they're
every
mega
church has failures within
people.
them. Yeah.
Okay. Then it just looks bad.
Yeah.
And it gets rough.
Okay, that's another thing I thought of too. Is like I was thinking, maybe it's not even that mega churches have more failures than any other church, but their failures are magnified because they just have that many more broken people in one space, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be a mess no matter what.
Like if I don't know, just if 1 in every 4 people like make a mistake or have a moral failure or something in any church, well, I mean, a church of 300, that's like, I don't know, whatever, 20 people or something. I don't. That's probably not even close.
But then, because then 1 in 4 would be 100.
Oh yeah. 100. Okay. Yeah, that wasn't even. It wouldn't have. That wasn't even close, anyways. But yeah. Anyways, like, okay, 100 people fail. Okay, that's a huge number, but just for whatever. The point is, like, okay,
we're all sinners.
If 4,000 people are in the church, that's 400 people, right? So it's the same ratio, yet it is more magnified. You know, like, all we're gonna see is, oh, look at how many people are like failing there, you know, as opposed to like the smaller church,
right?
And so, like, part of that too, a little bit, is I just think a natural result of people are broken. Every church is broken, and just the bigger that church is, the more that failure is probably going to be magnified a little bit, especially when so many people's eyes are on that one church, you know? So it's like, I feel like we have to have people do have to remember, like, that the church isn't perfect. Yeah. There is brokenness, you know, there needs to be like grace for that and stuff. But yeah, still, I don't know. I've been thinking lately, I'm just like, if I were to like end up being a pastor of a church that started growing like significantly, how would I like proceed? What would my game plan be? And if I'm gonna, I don't know, I like, especially if I'm gonna be in ministry, I'm like, I feel like I should seriously consider this, or like have a somewhat of a game plan to handle growth and success in ministry, because it seems like a lot of people experience success really fast before they're really ready for it, and then there is a moral failure or something falls apart, right? So like, I don't want to be the one caught off guard, not ready for growth. Like, God entrusts me with this thing that I'm just not ready for, and then I can't steward it well and it falls apart, you know? So like, yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to like think, like, is there like, what is the right way to like grow as a church? You know, what is there like a specific way that is better than any other way? Or like, should the church completely reform away from like being mega churches? Like,
that's the hard part too, is because if let's say you are a mega church and people are coming, and even if you're not and you're the main pastor, let's say, and you're preaching a decent amount, you know, you open up your pulpit, but you're still preaching them out. I'm trying to give benefit of the doubt a little bit. Yeah. But like, and then you say, all right, we're reforming and we're splitting up churches, and this is going to be the senior pastor, this is going to be the senior. How many people are still going to pick your church? Because it's you. You know what I mean? Like, then all of a sudden, or if you say, well, we're capping it, well, then how many of them are going to go to church? How many of them are just going to watch online? How many of them are going to, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's so hard, because then you're getting into what are we going to, I'm not saying you're saying this at all, but I'm like, my mind went to, we're just going to corral people and like, we're taking the first 5 that show up. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, stop. Like the cafeteria camp. Like, you know, it's just like, I don't know how you do it other than when you get someplace like Minneapolis. Okay. Or, yeah, we'll just say Minneapolis. And you got a mega church going on. Well, then you look at your demographic. Well, we're a church of 5,000. But 1,500 people are coming from Maple Grove. So let's do a Maple Grove campus. Because then you start to swindle it? No, that's not dwindle it down. And I feel like that's good. But then a lot of those churches anyway, well, we're just going to watch the live stream of the main campus. We're just making it. And it's like, I don't know if you could do that. But then I've seen it before where then there's a pastor of this campus, and then the people that go to that campus and are assigned to that campus all of a sudden are like, yeah, this leadership doesn't reflect the leadership of the and you start to lose people. So it's like, I don't know what you do, because I agree. I don't think mega churches, I feel like we gotta someplace, somewhere in time, move things to, yes, we gotta stay small, we got effective discipleship and so on and so forth relationally, but also I cannot think of a single way how you stop your church from growing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's
Or
like
not
you
growing,
want,
but like,
you want it to grow.
Right.
But,
you know what I mean. But
I mean, yeah, I've been thinking about, and I've been thinking like, I think our churches should eventually like branch off or like start a new campus. Like the multi-site campus thing, I think is actually a pretty good model, but not necessarily in the way that I've seen it a lot of times, where it is like a satellite stream, or like it's still under the same brand.
Right,
so like
right.
River Valley has 8 campuses, but they're all River Valley churches, and there's still one pastor ultimately in charge of every campus.
Right.
Yes, he's delegated some other leaders to be campus pastors, but they answer to one guy.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm even thinking like, I don't know if that's really healthy either, or really the best. So I was thinking like what if churches, like, they do expand, they plant a new campus, but they let go of that. Like eventually they like say, all right, like go
succeed. It's almost like church planning.
Yeah, just church plan, like turn it into church planning instead of just expanding our brand of church. Let's like get our people on board, on mission to say, hey, this place needs to be reached, and we're doing great here. Now it's time that we go and we multiply somewhere else, but not in the way of like, I'm just extending my leadership to another area. I'm empowering people to go, like sending people and then letting them go. Kind of like, I even think of like Jesus, he has his disciples and like is training them up, raising them up, whatever. And then he ascends into heaven, and then he leaves them with a mission. And he kind of just like, I mean, they still answer to Jesus, I guess, but like he like leaves them to it though a little bit, you know. And I feel like a lot of times with these multi-site campuses, like they're expanding, reaching out, but like there's still one leader who's kind of like holding on to it. Like it's still kind of his.
It all hinges on one person.
Yeah, it's still hinging on him. So it's like, maybe we need to plant churches, but drop the brand and let it eventually grow outside of your like leadership a little bit. Like you can help provide resources to get this church on its feet, help train up leaders to prepare them to lead this church, but at a certain point you need to say, all right, I'm gonna let go of this now, and you guys are gonna be your own separate entity basically. And I think we need to be able to do that. And I understand the temptation too, as like a pastor of a church that's growing. It's like, you've been there from the start, like you've seen it grow. It's kind of like this has been your baby a little bit, you know? And it's like, you want to continue to be a part of like the success of this church. And a little bit, I feel like there's a temptation, like I want to have my name attributed to like the growth of this church and these other campuses, but it's like, I think as a leader, you need to eventually be able to let go, and like
see success without my name on it.
Which is, I think just in general, I think that's a tough thing to do as a leader. To be able to completely let go eventually. Like,
oh, absolutely. Super
to
difficult.
Like kind of even train people to replace you in a way. Like lead with the idea that someone's going to replace me, Like, I feel like that's a huge struggle, even just in small churches. It's very easy for leaders to kind of want all the leadership to fall on themselves a little bit. And like, it's easy to almost become narcissistic. Like, I am the man, I am in charge. And we get used to that like power or that influence a little bit. And sometimes like these leaders probably had like plenty of opportunities to pass the torch or hand it off to someone or empower someone else, but they didn't really want to do that, So it's like, as leaders, what kind of mindset are we having as well? for leadership and ministry, you know?
I thought about that the other day. Was what happens when, like, Greg Crochelle retires?
Yeah.
What happens to that church?
Right.
When a new pastor comes in? Steve Furtick, what happens when a new pastor comes in? TD Jakes is going to be doing it till he's dead. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's already kind of older. I'm sure he could retire.
Yeah.
But, like, keep doing this thing.
Right.
But hot take, unpopular opinion. We're going to talk about some things that are not popular these days.
Nice.
But one of the benefits of, I'm just going to speak on our fellowship, not every denomination, but one of the benefits of Constitution and bylaws is because of that issue. Our Constitution and bylaws are set up so that there's a deacon board that keeps the pastor accountable.
Right.
And if there's something that's going haywire, there is something that happens with that. And, like, as in Mars Hill, you see he had, like, total control.
Yeah.
Total
Even though there
control.
were, like, elders,
right,
they didn't really have any influence.
Yeah,
like,
and he could fire elders.
Yeah.
You can't really do that as a pastor with the Constitution and bylaws the way that they are. And so, for me, I'm just like, that is one of the benefits, but even though a lot of people are like, Constitution and bylaws are stupid, denominations are dumb, Now, yes, in certain aspects, I understand what you're saying, but I'm talking about it in a different reference, is that there are some good things that come along with that.
kind of checks and balances.
Exactly, like why I think those things came in to help prevent some of those things.
Right.
But I also look at it, how many years ago when the AG district of Wisconsin, Northern Michigan, said there wasn't enough AG churches per capita for lacrosse. There wasn't. I don't know if there is anymore. I don't know how it looks now. But this was years ago, and they were wanting us to plant a church and have it be our sister church, where the dynamic would be, it's not a satellite.
Right.
It's, we are going to offer our people and resource to start this church until it's on its feet and then see it flourish. That dynamic works really well. Another benefit to kind of being part of the district and so on is because they keep track of that stuff and they have a person in charge of church planting and people that keep an eye on that. But that was something that we were going to do. And I remember at the time, I think what ended up happening was there was no buildings that were affordable because there was inflation, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but there was some issues with it. We almost bought a car dealership not we, the church, the district, to put the church in. I think it was the district, or maybe it was our church. I don't know. But we were going to do that. And that whole dynamic wasn't New Life Junior. It was whatever we were going to call it. And yeah, for a while it would be pastors are running back and forth and doing different things and planning and this and
But
that.
eventually the goal is that it can stand on its own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're saying, like having that where we're planting, but we're looking to plant, not expand. Expanding is a business model. Planting is a biblical model.
Yep.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Oh, that's good.
Wear it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's really good.
I don't know.
And I think a lot of mega churches, they do eventually kind of become their own entity, even in the terms of like they're not really associated with like a denomination anymore.
Well,
like
Hillsong did that, right?
Yeah, they kind of just become their own thing.
They actually legit listed to become their own denomination.
Yeah, I think they did
quite a few years back.
But, I think you see that a lot with like mega churches too. Is there's a huge lack of like accountability, even from like even if you have like accountability within your individual church, I think it is good and healthy to have accountability that comes from outside of your church, right? People who aren't even fully like directly impacted by what's going on in that church.
Yeah.
That's providing some checks and balances a little bit too. Because, I mean, I think, it's even possible, like, sure, a church can have, like, deacons or elders or board members, but, like, what if even those people are just going haywire, yeah, like, the pastor's, like, paying them off to just let them do whatever the heck they want, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that happens at churches,
That's why disconnecting the church from a body of churches, in essence, can be bad. Like when a lot of these churches I just read the other day, because a lot of churches at an unprecedented rate are going non-denom or sevenfold. I think it's sevenfold ministry.
Yeah, that is a thing, I think.
Yeah, it's
or
like
fivefold. Maybe.
Fivefold?
Yeah,
I can't remember if it was 5 or 7.
I think it's 5, actually. I don't know.
Either way, they're going fold ministry or
Whatever.
non-denom. But before they do that, the pastors, with the help of the deacons, because they're doing this thing,
Mm-hmm.
they write over the building into their own thing. So that way,
Mm-hmm.
when they step away from the district or their denomination, the denomination can't come for their church building.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, we already, and they did it all legal and it all works out. And it's like, not saying they don't have a right to do that.
Right.
Whatever. But what we're
Is
looking
that the
at
best thing
is that the
for us to
best
do?
thing.
Right.
Because then you're disconnecting from this body of believers when it's like, I never went to youth pastor retreat.
Mm-hmm.
I never, I would connect with certain youth pastors around when I was a youth pastor, and now I still connect with certain pastors that are around, especially with this men's ministry thing, connecting with other pastors and closely with the district. It's such an accountability thing that I think matters, that goes beyond, like you said, goes beyond your deacon board.
Yep.
It's gotta be, you have a mentor, you have friends, and you have deacons, and you have other pastors as a church leader that are different. You have to literally accountability your butt off for millions of reasons. And it just, you have to, otherwise you'll find your way into trouble. And the first step of accountability is humility, because it's pride and everything that keeps you from thinking, I don't need accountability. Look at the church, it's growing, I know what I'm doing. I have my own relationship with the Lord. And it's like, you do, and the church is growing. And guess what? I've seen ministries grow by the grace of God.
Yeah.
Not because of leadership,
Right.
but by the grace of God. And it's like, that's plain and simple. So, I don't know. There's a lot of different aspects to it that I think the mega church build, isn't the best. And I'm really curious how this is going to change moving into live stream and virtual. Like, I guarantee there's going to be a church in the metaverse. There's going to be a church in the metaverse. Is that bad? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if that's bad because at least in the metaverse, this is so weird, but at least in Ready Player One, if you don't know what metaverse is, just
talking about this.
I know. If you don't know what metaverse is, it's like virtual reality, but it's like Ready Player One, where you are a person, you can interact with people. At least in the metaverse, you're interacting with people. Live stream, half the time we disable our chat because you never know what you're gonna get raided by some neo-Nazis or something. I don't know, but that's what I mean. Like, at least you're interacting with people, and can you disciple via that? I think so. Because obviously I believe in person is better, but at the same time, can you do it? You could do it. Yeah. But is that going to be what? What are we going to do? I don't know.
Well,
We're going, because it keeps evolving.
Right.
It keeps evolving, and I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncharted territory, and I was even just talking with Emma the other day. I was like, sometimes I just think about in 30 years, are we gonna look back on the church, or just what we're living right now in the church, or even the mega church movement kind of thing, or the way we use media in the church? Are we gonna look back on it and see that was just terrible and we've completely reformed from it, and it's gonna be it was a dark time in the church? Or in 30 years, is that gonna still be are we just gonna keep moving the way we're moving right now? It's interesting to think what's normal for us right now, will that always be normal, or is this gonna be something where we're this was not good, we corrected, and now we have a new model?
There's going to be a big denominational shift.
Yeah,
the no electric guitar church.
Yeah.
And then the VR church.
Big,
there's just going to be two different.
Be a huge split. Technology and that. But that was another thing I thought we could get into a little bit, though, is what impact does technology and media have on the church, and how media technology has enabled churches to grow exponentially, or I think a big reason mega churches are even possible is simply because of the technology we have and media we have now. So what impact has that made, and how much of like media we see in church is actually healthy, and like how much of it do you think has actually just been really detrimental to the church?
So, like, do we want to talk like the psychology of social media as well, or we're just talking the tech aspect? Because I feel like those are, because it involves technology, but I think it's the psychological aspect of social media.
I think just the technology we incorporate into our church service. Like the way we use technology to draw people to our church, the way we use it to run our services, like we live stream, even the music we play, like all
Which do you think is more detrimental? The technology we use, the instruments, whatever, that we use, do you think that's more detrimental? Or this stupid, I have a punchline sermon that isn't scripture?
Right.
What do you think has been more detrimental? Because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the punchline sermons, but there's like a lack of scripture being used.
It's almost like self-help.
Yeah.
Speeches more than.
Yeah. Like and a lack of maybe some in-depthness that really draws people in. Because then we're posting our 1.5 minute video of my cool tagline to draw people in.
Which comes out of this social media movement.
Right.
Social media has created this like punchline information.
Yeah. And I just wasn't sure what was more detrimental.
I think that is more detrimental because I think media is not inherently hurtful or wrong in the church, but media elevates and magnifies unhealthy church that much more.
Yeah.
Like just as much as it can really empower like a church that's doing things right, it can also really empower a church that's doing things wrong.
Yeah.
You know? So like, I mean, I would say the person who's just preaching a bunch of fluff is more like hurtful.
Because then you're getting a lot of Christians that don't grow in their faith ignorant, and then they are going to be more detrimental in their life because they're not doing what they're actually called or doing in anything. So
it's really hard when you have two people claiming to be authentic followers of Jesus. One person's preaching, you can love Jesus and do whatever you want, and he'll make you rich, and you can love whoever you want to love and do whatever you want. And then this other person saying, no, like there's truth, and part of following Jesus is like suffering or sacrifice, all this stuff. And like someone who is maybe just becoming like an early Christian or something like that, it's like, well, why is this guy saying this thing and this guy saying this thing, and they're both Christians, and it's like confusing. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, this message sounds a little nicer, and if I can be a Christian and do this, I'd rather do this than be a Christian and
do that.
Have to like die to myself. Right. You know. Right. So and media has like kind of allowed that to happen, because now this dude preaching fluff is on YouTube and 1 million people can listen to him. Right. Whereas before, that dude preaching fluff, I mean, maybe his 300 people in his church would have been affected, but nobody outside of that is being affected.
Now technology boosts that.
So yeah, like it gives a platform to people who maybe shouldn't have a platform, but it also does give a platform to people who should have the platform. So it's like, I don't know, it's weird, but I feel like media definitely, I don't know, sometimes it seems almost more hurtful than helpful, just because of how much it does elevate and give a platform to individuals, and individuals who are not on track or not like preaching the right things, or it's like that stuff almost like drowns out the churches that are doing things right, you know.
And I can even say for myself, like, you know, back trying to be this influencer, whereas like people would maybe look at me now and be like, you're still doing the same thing, but understand there was a change of heart and change of mind in what I was doing a couple years back, or a year or more ago, I forget when, but you know, there was a time in my life where it was like trying to be influencer, trying to be pastor influencer, trying to be Christian gamer influencer, like trying to do this stuff, and how that impacted me as a church leader, because then it's the Logan Paul effect that I brought up years ago. I made some video on it, of course, it never went viral, but no, just kidding. This is a joke, because anyway. But the whole Logan Paul thing, dude blows up, keeps going, and people are subbing to him. He grows super fast. He's being, an idiot. Then he starts making worse and worse videos, but people are like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then you get hate and love. Well, then no publicity is bad publicity and all this different stuff. He grows. Right. And then one day he crosses the line with Suicide Forest, and the whole world turns on him. And it's like, you created this monster, and now you're saying, nope, this is where we draw the line. Michael Todd. Same thing. Fancy, mega, punchline, viral preacher. Keep doing it. Not saying he doesn't have truth in his messages. That's not what I'm saying. I haven't really listened to him. But, like, relationship goals, all that different stuff. And he's doing this until a month ago, he spits in somebody's face on stage. And then it's, whoa! It's like, okay, but you pushed him to this point. Now, yes, he has a responsibility. I'm not saying Logan, I'm not saying Michael Todd didn't have this responsibility, but because of the media aspect and what it does to leaders is we push them. The same way the church is growing, and I keep doing this, well, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to up it, and I'm going to keep going, and Mars Hill, like, that's what it seems like. It's just, I know what I'm doing. And all these different things that happen because of the media platform, and I know just how that changed me for a long time was trying to be this viral, trying to be this impressive, trying to do this, and instead of I'm doing my job for the Lord and I'm serving in ministry, like, just realizing that I'm serving in ministry, I'm not working. Yeah. For a long time, it's like, no, this is a job, I'm working, so I'm going to try to work in business and viral and this and that, instead of, no, I'm serving, how can I serve you? And then, oh yeah, I forgot, today's payday. Like, just totally voiding that. Yeah. When you shift your perspective from this media standpoint and what it does to leaders, because I think just psychologically, I don't know, you know what, dude? The church grows and I start getting paid a massive paycheck. Yeah. Do I really want to retire? I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like, any human being is not set up for that situation. I mean, Judas sold out Jesus for that much of a bag. We're seeing people sell out for a whole lot bigger bag. Right. And yet, the only thing is that Judas didn't take his money, go stand on the corner, and start preaching about Jesus. While a lot of us are doing that. A lot of pastors are selling out the truth and the message, and then they're taking their bag, but then they're still using Jesus for their gain. It's like, whoa. Yeah. This is getting a little weird, but it's because of this social media. And that's why I was saying, like, the psychology behind social media and how that affects the mental. But as far as, like, technology, it's one of those things where I'm like, if the Holy Spirit's moving or not. And if you go into a church where there's a smoke machine, or you go to a church in Africa where they got plastic broken chairs and a flood, Holy Spirit's moving. At some point, technology, I don't think hinders unless we make it a hindrance. Like, it's not awkward unless you make it awkward. Like, that kind of a thing. But as far as live streaming, because we've talked about that before, I feel like, I don't know if it was on the podcast or if it was just us talking, and I've talked to my dad about it, talking about it recently. I'm like, we literally shot ourselves in the foot during COVID with this, live streaming, doing this, doing that, and our live stream blew up, and it's doing well on our YouTube channel. For us, a small church, 500 subscribers, like, that's a big deal, and live streaming, 20 people are watching. This is awesome. Now we're back in person. Everybody's watching the live stream. Go. Yeah, and it's like, oh, well, because you can get fed because your mindset is consumer instead of the other. So, like, technology, more than just what it does to the leaders and the church, what it does to the individual is like spiritual Wall-E.
Yeah. Just sit in your chair and just...
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Technology is... It's kind of tough because I think it's done incredible things for the church. I think it's given the church an incredible reach, an incredible influence that it maybe doesn't have without some technology. But it is so easy to misuse technology or to allow technology to become a distraction. That's where I think we just, as churches and as church leaders, I think we just need to be aware of the potential dangers of technology and, like, what we need to just be aware of the impact that our technology is having, and like, what is our technology? Okay, the technology we're implementing into our service, what is it adding to the service, and what is it maybe taking away from or distracting from? You know, like, we need to be constantly like weighing out, like, okay, what is this? How much is this maybe just distracting, or just we're trying to just draw people with like flashing lights and fancy stuff, and how much is this technology elevating like just the word being preached, or already like healthy parts of the church just being elevated more, you know? So I just think it's really important that we as the church like steward technology well and take it very seriously, and not just hop on trends because they're trends, or like not just like implement this technology because that's what everybody's doing. This is what all the churches are doing. If we don't do it, we're behind, you know?
Yeah. Are we going to serve the Lord with this? Is it making ministry more effective? Right.
And is this what's best for our specific church? Like, just because every single church is live streaming doesn't mean that your church has to live stream if that's not what you need. Or maybe you don't even have the funds for it, but you like put yourself in debt just to buy a live stream camera just so you can be live streaming, and only like 3 people are watching your live stream. You know, it's like, I think we just need to be really careful about the way we're using technology and media. But if it's used the right way, I think it can be like a super awesome tool. But yeah, again, I just think a lot of the unhealthy church that we're seeing, or like unhealthy megachurch stuff we're seeing, I think was made possible by technology.
Yeah.
And like social media.
The
and
promotion.
Stuff. It's almost like
I think
it opened the door for some detrimental things, but
combined with the seeker sensitive.
Yeah.
Because seeker sensitive before, I remember when we were in Hibbing, and I gotta be careful. When we were in Hibbing, and then I legitimately can't remember where. I'm not just saying that so I don't expose somebody, but like I can't remember where we were getting pressure about this, that, and the other, even though we had just gone through this revival up there. I mean, I don't remember this. I've heard about it after the fact because I was not paying attention as a little kid, you know.
Yeah.
But then there's churches that started to do the seeker-sensitive movement more so. I think seeker-sensitive has probably always been around, but like it started to become more of a movement. And there wasn't social media.
Right.
It's all by word of mouth, you know, or an ad in the newspaper or a billboard, which good for the church in the plaza. I forget what it's called.
New Hope.
New Hope.
That one.
They got a billboard spot by Subway.
Nice.
And I'm saying props to them, because one of the reasons why, I don't know this because I don't know a ton about the church, but one of the biggest reasons why I've seen a lot of success for them is because their Celebrate Recovery program. And props to them. Because once again, smaller church, but what they're doing, they're offering something that is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, props to you, and putting that up on your billboard, Celebrate Recovery, mornings at 10 a.m. Me as the church up the road, I'm not like, oh, well, we better get a billboard. No, I don't give a fuzz. Like, props to you. But that technology, they're not being seeker sensitive, though. Then we're getting the seeker sensitive movement, and now you're putting that on social media. You're getting the posts. You're getting the 2-minute videos with the punchline. You're getting this. Not that there isn't some truth in it. Not that there isn't biblical truth behind what you're saying even. Not that there isn't, a good small group program at your church. But what we're starting to see is people showing up for the wrong reason and doing the wrong thing. Not that they're not getting any good out of it.
Yeah.
But they're showing up for the wrong reason and doing the wrong thing. And that is just as detrimental as if they were living in the world.
Yeah.
It might be...
It's almost more detrimental.
It's worse, because then you think you're safe.
Yep.
But you're not.
When you're really not. You're deceived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the intent of some of the pastors out there that do that. I'm not saying it's their intent. They might be doing it because it's the wave. And then they see it as, well, we'll get them in the door with this. And then once they're in the door, then we could do this. Maybe, because I'm not in every church out there, so I don't want somebody thinking that, it's hard not to generalize, because we're not, we don't have numbers and percentages.
Yeah.
2% of mega churches. No, we're just talking mega church model. But, yeah, you lose out on the relationship aspect in discipleship.
Yeah. And I'm all for, like, making church attractive to people, like, because if your church is really like preaching the gospel and standing on truth, then we want as many people to like hear that as we can, and like we want people to be a part of it. And so like if by having coffee time that helps like one more person like feel welcomed or feel like they can get plugged into the church, then let's do it. And that's where it's like we assess like, okay, coffee time is a worthwhile thing to invest in because it's helping people like get plugged into our church and ultimately leading to them having the opportunity to be discipled or like hear the gospel preached or something like that, you know? So it's like, again, like technology or even like making our church like attractive or like, you know, I don't know, just a fun or something like that. Like, I think that's great, you know, but it's like, what is like the end result of that, you know? Is it just to get people in the door, just as many people as we can get in the door? Like all we care about is just numbers, or is it to get people to like get plugged in and discipled, or like, you know, we can do these things without still compromising truth, or like get people in the door, but then we're still going to tell you like the hard truth, you know, we're not going to compromise our message. And part of the problem is we're seeing churches are doing everything they can to get in the door, and then they're watering down their message and watering down the gospel from the pulpit to try to keep them in the door, you know? So I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to get people in the door if we're not compromising like truth and like scripture and what it means to be a Christian, you know?
Crap. This gets me to something that just happened recently that I just remembered. Because sometimes people say the ends justify the means, right? So, like, if you're trying to raise money for your church, you know, what are you gonna go run drugs and then donate that to the church? Does that make it okay? Because this legitimately just happened. A buddy of mine texted me from down south, and he's like, "The progressive church is dumb," and I'm like, "You're not wrong." You know, but wondering why, like what brings this up? There was a church who put on a drag show and played gospel music and sold beer, and all that money went to the Church of Christ. And I'm like, no. I'm just like, see, that's where I'm like, no. Like, there's a line there, you know? I'm all about reaching people in the world. Yep. I'm all about, you know, doing a fundraiser, car wash, whatever. Not a bikini car wash. Gobes. No, I'm kidding. But that, to me, I was like, what the fuzz? What are you doing?
Right.
Like, that, to me, doesn't make sense. And that stems from this whole thing is like, well, the ends justify the means. We raised a bunch of money for the church, and now we can go reach people. It's like,
what did you lose in the process?
Yeah.
What did you break in the process?
What do you know? So, I don't know. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of that stuff that, just using that as a parallel to the technology that we're using. You know, what are we doing? What are we compromising to bring this in, bring that in, and so on and so forth? You know, it's like youth convention the one year when we're worshiping, and then the bridge of the song is some secular song's bridge. And it's just like, okay, not awful, but like, what are we doing? You know, like, why our songs aren't good? Like, worship songs aren't good enough? Like, what are we promoting? What are we doing here? What is going on? And it's not like it was like a sit back and like super judge at the time I did, but like, since then, it's like, not sit back and super judge, but also be like, yeah, we're trying to like reach people. Yeah. But what do we do in the process of all of that? I think what are we losing?
I think it's funny because I feel like so often the church is trying so hard to look as much like the world as possible and still be the church. Yeah. In hopes to like reach the world. But honestly, like, the world is looking in on that, and they're like, you guys just look stupid. Yeah. Like, it's just a cheaper, cornier version of, like, celebrity or, like, Hollywood or whatever we're already seeing, and it just makes you look bad. You know, so it's like, I feel like sometimes we're trying to, like, appeal to the world by like looking more like the world, or we're trying to make these cheap gimmicky versions of like pop culture or like, you know, Hollywood or something like that in the churches in hopes that like we'll be able to reach more people. But like that's not really what like the world is looking for. Like if they're gonna be coming to church, they're looking for something different than what the world is already giving them, you know? Like why are we trying to give them what they're already getting everywhere else? Like the church should just double down on giving them something they can't get anywhere else, right? And like how about instead we just be countercultural and like challenge people and call people to something greater, or call people to like get out of their comfort zones, like make people uncomfortable. Because for the people, like for people who are gonna reject that, like they're gonna reject it no matter how much you try to sugarcoat it, you know? But for the people who really like need the real Jesus and need like the real church, they're not gonna be scared away from real truth, or like the church just being what it like authentically is supposed to be, you know? But we've kind of like watered down the church, and it's almost become just like less attractive in a way, I think. Or like we're losing people, because even if we get people in the door, they're in the door for like a few weeks or a few months or something, but then eventually it just kind of dies up. Like all they're getting is fluff, you know? And so then we lose them. And like statistically the church is like declining. It's losing people. And I mean, part of me wonders, is it because we're afraid to just be like authentically the church, you know, and we're trying to look like the rest of the world, or appeal to like trends or pop culture, you know? But like is that really what people are looking for, you know? Even if you get people in the door by like some trendy thing or your technology, is that really the thing you want them to be drawn to in your church? Or do you want them to be coming in the door because of the gospel and because like you're preaching truth, you know?
Well, and that's the whole, like, we're supposed to be different.
Somebody
you might have touched on it a little bit, but like, somebody that's lost in the world getting all this stuff, then they come to church and they're getting the same thing.
It's like, why do they need to be here then, you know?
You know, it's meant to be different. But
I mean, through all this, I feel like one of the biggest problems is that people, like congregations, I think are what we choose to value determines what becomes successful in a church. Like some pastor could be preaching whatever the heck he wants and be doing his punchline sermons on social media, and that church could be super flashy and whatever, yada yada yada. But if everyone chose to say, you know what, no, we're not gonna value like watered down messages, or we're not gonna value like flash over substance, you know, then like whatever that person's doing, like, all right, whatever, they can go ahead and do their thing. But instead, people are attracted to that. People are choosing to value that. Like people are choosing the surface level, like, ooh, that looks really nice and shiny, over like real like substance or whatever, you know, like. And so in a little bit, like, we kind of create, like you mentioned earlier, we create these like monsters or like these tragedies, or we're like, we can't really blame it on like leaders even for like failing, or churches, like church leaders for like having the wrong church model, because we're the ones choosing to get behind that church model. You know, if nobody was getting behind that church model, they wouldn't keep having that as a model for their church. And so I think the biggest solution comes down to like, what are we, just as the church, like the body, not the building, but like the people of the church, what are we going to choose to value in our church services and in our communities? What are we going to choose to promote, and what are we going to like refuse to to promote, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is what will determine what your church becomes, I think.
Yeah.
Is what the people make it to be.
Right. And this is, so, that's what I was looking at. I was verifying something is like, man, and I don't want to just bully Stephen Furtick, but, so, Elevation Church has a weekly attendance as of 2021 of 27,000 people, roughly.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Their Facebook page has 1.7 million likes.
Dang.
That's nuts.
That is wild.
Stephen Furtick Facebook page, almost 5 million likes.
That's insane.
Why is it the man has more likes than the church?
Yeah. It's crazy.
That's where it's like, okay. And I'm not saying there's an issue with that, but I'm saying what he does on his own personal page, by all means, you're doing your thing. Church, and however, you can just see already what the world likes more than the other. What they like more is this versus the church aspect of it. And then we like the social media church, but we're not going to church in person. Not saying that their church would be 1.7 million people on a weekly basis, but like 1.7 million to 27,000. I mean, 27,000 is ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. But 1.7 million people like you on Facebook, 27,000 to 10. That's really great and awesome. I'm just saying from that aspect of technology, because I don't know if the 27,000 includes whoever watches their live streams. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
Probably not, because that would be probably even more ridiculous. But maybe twice that. But it's just one of those things that you realize, like, yeah, social media, technology, how we're doing this. And was this meant to be? Was this the way that it was meant to be? You know?
Yeah.
And because then there's, the scripture verses that talk about, like, Peter as the rock. And then on this rock I build my foundation, whatever. And so it's like, well, that's kind of putting Peter on a pedestal in a way, right? I mean, not entirely, but a little bit. So it's just kind of like, is there something to be said about individuals, yes, who are called to do this, but then you got to look at who that person is and how they do it. And back then it wasn't 27 or 4.7 million people liking Peter's Facebook page. You know what I mean? It's just like, where is this the way it was designed? And if it's not, then what is our excuse? What is our excuse for keeping it like that?
Yeah. And a lot of it, again, it's like, or you mentioned like the Tesla versus like the Honda, and you can have both of them for free. Obviously, you choose the Tesla, it's kind of like you can choose to eat McDonald's or like choose to eat like a healthy like meal, like salad or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's way easier to just like, and initially more attractive to just eat McDonald's, right? And so, sadly, like McDonald's is kind of winning over the salad. Like the salad is there, but the majority of people aren't having the discipline to choose to value the salad over the fast food.
Right.
The fast food church is there. It's big. It's flashy. Like, ooh, that looks pretty cool. I want to be a part of that. And sadly, that's probably winning people's attention a lot more than the church that has substance and is really doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And so it's like we need to have the discipline as the body of Christ to value the right things. But sadly, it's, for a lot of people, it's a lot easier to value the wrong things in church and to be attracted to the wrong things. And I just think that's kind of like what we're seeing a lot today is the flashier version of things, although less, like with less substance, is available to people, and that's winning people's attention over like the less flashy but more beneficial option. Yeah. So it's like, if the flashy option wasn't there, then all people would be left with is to decide to either be a part of this church or not. But it's like, now there's different variations of church that they can choose to be a part of, and a lot of times the less healthy version, I think, is the one that people are being drawn to.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, I think, or it's kind of just a sad reality a little bit that's been made possible by like technology and through our culture, like wanting to elevate leaders and all this stuff. So it's like, we need to really take seriously our role as individuals deciding what are we going to choose to value. Am I going to have the discipline to value what is the most healthy and most beneficial for me, or am I going to just like settle for like surface level, like flashy flair or whatever, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I think we just really have to choose to value the right things and have the right standard for church just personally. Yeah. I think is really the most practical way we could bring a solution to any like problems in the church right now, or any problem with the mega church movement, you know?
Yeah.
But I think as long as we continue to value the wrong things, like we're still going to have the same issues going on, you know? So there needs to be a shift in what we as the people, the body of Christ, choose to promote and value, you know?
Absolutely.
But, yeah. I don't know. Was there any other thoughts you had?
Social media is not bad. So those of you out there who value the right things and got a church that is doing the right things, be active.
Yeah.
Be active.
Inhabit that space.
Right. It's not that the social media posting is bad. It's the content, the quality, things like that that we need to work on. Remember, social media is a tool that we use. And so, like, if you got the right stuff going on, share that. Don't feel like, oh, yeah, see, they use social media, it's evil. It's like, not necessarily. No, use it for the right thing. So
nothing in itself is inherently evil. It's what people choose to
do with it.
So
something
comes from the
heart of people.
But
yeah,
that was the last thing, is just encourage people.
Yeah.
Plus, your pastor would really appreciate it, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, that's good.
That is.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
All right, that's
I don't
all
know
we
how
got
long
for
that was. It
Truth
feels like it was a long one.
Thanks for listening.
I don't know. How long was it? Let's see. 120?